So, Tyler,
Alex,
what is your favorite season?
summer obviously because it's my birthday, but I'm a big fall fan too. Not the pumpkin spice fall, but like the crunchy leaves and the colors changing.
Yes,
It's the best.
that is my favorite as well. I was just thinking,
Nice temperature too.
yeah, especially that like mid-fall, like that October. I mean, this year is a little warm, but like when it's hitting like in our area, that comfortable fall is like 60, 70, 60s, 70s, like a nice sunny day with a half decent breeze, so you can still go out in like jeans and a t-shirt, and it's comfortable.
Yeah.
That is
Not sweat my butt off in the 90-degree heat.
oh
Not having to put 3 layers on because it's 7 degrees outside like it was today.
yeah. I think it is currently 22. So for anyone who lives somewhere where it does not get that cold,
Lucky you.
lucky lucky you. But welcome everybody to Life the Complete Story. I am Alex along with Tyler. We are your hosts for the podcast. We will start, as we usually do, with a little bit of nature in the news. Today, it's a little bit of nature. I think I'd call it a little more chemistry, but obviously there's a lot of chemistry in nature. But Tyler, if you want to take it away, this is pretty cool. This is actually pretty big in the realm that it is about. So
Yeah, so as I said, it's kind of a chemistry lesson for our nature in the news. We're talking about the breakdown of PFAS, which are forever chemicals.
yes,
Polyfluoroalkyl substances. Big thing in plastics, like the big no-no in plastics, right?
I don't remember if it's plastics, but I know it's in a lot of stuff. Like I know it's in fire gear. I know that.
Yeah, so it's
Like the foam, like the especially stuff they use at the airport, like the firefighting foam. I know that it used to be. I think they've been really working to phase it out because these PFAs are also known as forever chemicals, which is really what this article is about.
When they break down and they go into the water system, they kind of stick around in the water system forever and ever, and it causes a lot of problems in terms of the ecosystems and just pollution in general. But team of scientists at at Rice University, which is down south in Texas in the United States, have kind of discovered a new way to break them down. We have had ways to break down PFAs before, but they're really slow, and this one's kind of faster than the others, and it works in still water and running water. Like it'll run in rivers, taps, and wastewater.
To quote the article, it said this new compound is called an LDH, or a layered double hydroxide, which it's a material made from both copper and aluminum. So a transition metal in, I think aluminum, is it considered a metalloid? I think is it a metalloid? It's like right in that funky, like right on the edge.
It's the staircase.
Yes, right there. But copper is definitely transition metal. And what this layered compound does is it is able to capture and absorb these PFAs at 1,000 times the rate of other material, or 1,000 times better than the traditional materials, which is incredibly fast. And even it said 100 times faster than commercial carbon filters. So very heavy duty carbon-based filters. It is 100 times faster than those at getting these forever chemicals out of the water, which is massive because they are such an issue, because they stick around forever. They're one of the biggest concerns for pollution, especially in the water. It's the PFAs. They come from things like Teflon pans, waterproofing and clothing, some food packaging. So I think maybe some of the plastics you were talking about, because they are so resistant to heat, grease, and water, but that also, because they're so durable, they don't break down. So getting them out of the water supply when they do start to break down or leach into the water is a big problem. And these chemicals are linked to liver damage, reproductive disorders, immune system disruption, and even certain types of cancer. So, I mean, it's even that much more of a win, the fact that they're able to remove these chemicals at such a higher rate. There are things like the activated carbon, or there's ion exchange resins that are like the standard right now for removing these chemicals, but they have a low efficiency, They're not very fast. They can only handle so much. And the other waste that is also like the other contaminated waste still needs to be handled with that. They create that like a secondary waste. So with this new approach, is able to handle that secondary waste a lot better. It absorbs more faster in any multiple types of situations, not just in standing water where it's a given time, even through flowing water. So the fact that this could be something that if they're able to upscale it could be used in like industrial cleaning processes or even wastewater treatment plants to be able to remove these forever chemicals, which is incredible.
Awesome. Anything else to add, Alex, to this?
I don't think so. I think it's just the fact that it's considered the first. They say in the article here, makes it like the first known eco-friendly, sustainable system for the removal of these PFAs, and they're able to clean up this compound and reuse it as well. So it's not just a one-time use thing. It's from the way they're talking about this seems like, I don't want to say it's the golden ticket, but it is a massive step in helping to clean up these forever chemicals. And they were even able to, I think when they were doing this, they even found a similar compound using nitrates, I think, that also worked, but they didn't test that. They just tested the copper aluminum LDH.
Right. All right. Well, that's going to conclude our Nature in the News today. We will move on into our lesson. As we kind of talked about last week, we're moving on into Anura, which are frogs and toads, and we will get into our first suborder of the group. This is going to be Archaeobatrachia. These are known as your primitive frogs. They have a lot of physiological traits not found in other groups. We'll get to them. Each individual group kind of has their own bits and pieces that aren't found in other groups. But the most common one found is they have 9 vertebrae compared to the 8 vertebrae found in traditional, more modern frogs. They're found mostly in Eurasia, New Zealand, and the Philippines, as well as Borneo, the island of Borneo. But the family Ascaphidae, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is found in the Pacific Northwest, so that Washington, Oregon, the Northern Rockies as well. We'll get our first group. This is going to be Leopelmatidae.
Good job.
And our lone genus is going to be Leopelma. These guys are known as the New Zealand primitive frog. They obviously live in New Zealand. I believe mostly on the northern island. Yeah, mostly on the northern island. A little tiny bit on the most northern tip of the southern island. They have a multitude of unique primitive features. Like I said, that extra vertebrae totaling 9. They also have tail muscles, but they lack tails like most modern frogs do. So this might be like the branch to modern frogs, or they just decided they didn't need it. It's kind of a divergent evolution type thing. These guys are weird because they have a late jump recovery, only resetting for the next jump after kind of belly flopping back onto the ground from the previous jump. So most frogs, like most modern frogs, when they jump, as they're in the air, they kind of reload their body, so they land in a position that they can just take off again on the next jump. These guys
helps absorb the impact a little as well.
Yeah, and these guys will jump, fall on their stomach, like spread out, and then they'll like gather themselves back up. Not very efficient when trying to escape prey. That being said, they're very small, roughly about 5 centimeters. So that's what, 2 inches?
Maybe.
It's like 2.5 centimeters is an inch, 2 inches. They lay eggs on moist ground, mostly under rocks and vegetation. After hatching, their tadpoles live on the backside of the males, eliminating the need for water. I don't think that's quite as in-depth as the Suriname toad, but I'd assume it's kind of like the tadpoles are obviously very small as well. The adult is 2 inches, but after hatching, the tadpoles, just with that. One member, the Hochstetter's frog, will lay their eggs in shallow ponds and has free living tadpoles, and they can live for up to 30 years. Now
that's pretty good.
But yeah, I think that's due to their small size. It helps a lot because they can keep a lower metabolism because they don't have. There's not as much to keep active. And I said there's that Hochstetter's frog. There's also 2 other species, the Archie's frog as well as the Hamilton's frog. And that'll do it for our Leopelmatidae. Alex, you want to take us into Ascaphidae?
Yes, sir. So our next group is Ascaphidae. It has one genus, Ascaphis. There are 2 members, the tailed frog and the Rocky Mountain tailed frog. The tail is just an extension of the male cloaca, so it's only found in the males. They are the only North American frogs that reproduce by internal fertilization, hence the extension of the cloaca. This adaptation has led to increased breeding success because they typically live near fast-flowing streams. They are considered a sister taxon to all other frogs, along with Leopelmatidae. They have 9 vertebrae, as Tyler said before. The adults do have free ribs, so like floating ribs that are unattached to the vertebrae. They're just kind of chilling in there. I'm not sure what that would be.
I don't know what the advantage should. Yeah, I don't see the advantage at all to having.
I don't know. The only thing I could think is that maybe when they belly flop, since they're loose, they're able to kind of absorb impact. I'm not sure. They lack vocalization, so these frogs do not make noise. The cool thing, though, is they do secrete antimicrobial peptides known as ascaphins. So these peptides share similarities more to African scorpions than they do other frogs, which is weird. It's kind of unique. Makes these guys a little special.
Yeah, I don't know why that is either. These guys are just oddballs.
Yeah, they are kind of odd. That'll take us to our next group, Tyler.
So our next group's going to be Aletidae. They are known as the painted frogs or the midwife toads. They're endemic to Europe as well as North Africa. There are 3 extant genera, Alites, Discoglossus, and Latonia. There wasn't a lot of information regarding the group as a whole, so I'll give you a little bit of information about each genus individually. Alites can be found throughout most of continental Europe as well as northwest Africa. They get their name midwife frogs because the males will carry their eggs in a string wrapped around their legs, kind of like a parental care, which is not unusual, but also not super common among frogs, I'd say.
Yeah, there's a picture of them, but I need a better picture. Here we go.
Yeah. So they keep their eggs on their back legs and kind of walk around with them until they hatch. And once they hatch, they kind of pop a squat at the water's edge and let the tadpoles hatch. They're they have thin tongues. So not thin tongues. They have flat round tongues, unlike other frogs who have thin tongues. So quite the opposite there. They are nocturnal animals hiding under logs and in tunnels, which they dig in the dry sandy soil with their forearms and snouts. So they kind of have some pretty robust forearms, I would say.
Yeah, it looks like they're pretty thick compared to other frogs, those forearms.
They'll feed on an array of invertebrates, ranging from flies and beetles to annelids and things of that nature, while tadpoles feed primarily on vegetation. The warts on the back, you can see them pretty well in this picture as well. They'd be on the top side of the back. They give off an odorous poison when handled or attacked, while the tadpoles lack the poison. And there are 5 members in this group: the Iberian midwife toad, the Betic midwife toad, the Moroccan midwife toad, the Majorcan midwife toad, and the common midwife toad. They all have their own little regions throughout Europe and Northern Africa that they kind of live in. Our next group, Alex, you want to take it?
Sure, I'll do the next 2 because they're both a little smaller. So the next group, Discoglossus. This is the painted frogs found in southern Europe and northwestern Africa. There are only 6 members. There's not a whole lot about them. There's the Iberian painted frog, Spanish painted frog, Corsican painted frog, Mediterranean painted frog, Tyrrhenian painted frog, and the Moroccan painted frog. So kind of all in that, like I said, that Southern Europe, Northwest Africa, around the Mediterranean Sea, Iberian Peninsula, where Spain and Portugal are, as well as Morocco. So kind of all clustered right there around the Mediterranean Sea. And then our next group is Latonia. This genus of frogs only has one extant member, and that is the hula painted frog. They are endemic to Israel. This group contains several fossil species that go back to the Paleogene and the Neogene. So go back a little ways.
We'll bring us to our next group, which is going to be our last group of for our lesson today. This is going to be Bombina Torridae. These guys are some of my favorite frogs, just because they look really cool. They're a family of toads found throughout Eurasia. They have fossils down from the Pliocene and Pleistocene. There are two genera, Barbarula, which are the jungle toads. There's two members, the Philippine and the Bornean flat-headed frogs. And then our second group is going to be Bombina, and Alex has put a picture of a Bombina member. They're relatively small frogs, no longer than 2 inches, so kind of in that same size range as pretty much every other frog we've talked about. I think the midwife toads can be a little bit bigger, but not much. These guys are known as the fire-bellied toads. They get that name because on their undersides they have that bright. Yeah, this one has yellow that Alex pulled up, but they can either have yellow or red coloration on their stomach side, on the ventral side, and their top end, their dorsal side is more of a mottled green brown.
There's one that's got nice red, orangey red color.
And those colors act as that aposematic warning. They have that foul taste. And then when they're confronted, they engage in Unken reflex. Alex, if you could please pull up a picture of Unken reflex. It's a display where the frog kind of arches its back and it displays that bright color of the front, kind of like a back handspring type deal.
Let me see if I can find one. I found this picture. I don't know if this is it, or if that's
that's it.
Is that it? Okay.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if that was just a dead frog. So
no, they kind of like do a back handspring, flip themselves upside down, and show off that bright color because it's not on their backside. But they do that when they're threatened, confronted. They lay their eggs hanging off the plant stems of water plants, and their offspring will develop in pools and puddles, often metamorphosing within a few weeks. Their tadpoles eat vegetations, while the adults eat insects like flies and beetles, as well as shrimp and annelids. They have a unique mating call rather than the familiar croak that everybody's used to. They sound like dogs barking, which
interesting.
Yeah, I'd be kind of perplexed to walk through the forest and the swamp and hear a couple dogs barking.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Some of the members within this Bombina group are common exotic pets, mostly the European fire-bellied toad, and I think the yellow-bellied toad are the two most popular ones. And they can live upwards of 10 years. There's been some cases of 20, but most of them live within that 3 to 10 year time span. They secrete a combination of bombesin and 5-hydroxytryptamine. Alex, if you could try to figure out what that is in the meantime, because I know what it is. I'm asking if you know what it is.
Hydroxytryptamine. I mean, obviously, it is a chemical. Looks like it's some sort of neuroinhibitor. Oh, no, serotonin. Ah,
I just find that incredible that their secretion, their noxious secretion is serotonin, which is one of the happy like endorphins that get released.
Yeah.
And those cause skin irritation and eye irritation, but they're not too serious, and they can be treated through rinsing. So if you come into contact with either of those chemicals, you can just kind of rinse it off like you would poison ivy or a light burn. And there are 6 members: the European, Hubei and Union fire-bellied toads, the Oriental fire-bellied toad, the Apennine yellow-bellied toad, and the yellow-bellied toad. Alex, I will pass it over to you for your most wanted for the day.
Yes, sir. So, most wanted for today is something that we talked about a little bit last week in regards to pregnancy tests, but this week we're talking about it as an invasive species. That is the African clawed frog. So, we talked about it a little bit last week. They're kind of in that 2 to 5 inch body length size range. The problem with them is that they are very adaptable. They can live in a lot of both natural and man-made habitats, from lakes, ponds, and wetlands into canals. They prefer stagnant ponds or very slow streams, but they can also be found in fast-moving waters. And while they are a very water-dependent species, they can migrate over land, and they are actually capable of estivation during dry and drought periods, which is a big thing because they have been introduced into a lot of the western states, such as California, but as well places like Arizona, Colorado, and then some wetter states like Massachusetts, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, and Wisconsin. They can tolerate a lot of water salinities, pH levels, temperatures, nutrient levels. So they're, like I said, they're very adaptable. A lot of this probably comes from them being native to sub-Saharan Africa, where the weather is very, very changeable. And they have voracious appetites, can eat anything that they can fit into their mouth, dead or alive. This includes aquatic invertebrates, other frogs, even small fish, and even birds.
That's terrifying.
And they'll also eat their own tadpoles. So they said they'll eat anything and everything, outcompeting a lot of native frogs and other aquatic species. They are also known vectors for a lot of parasites and diseases, such as the chytrid fungus. So they have been, in places they've been introduced, they have spread chytrid fungus to native frog and amphibian populations all over the world where they've been introduced, most likely being responsible or partly responsible with the chytrid fungus for the extinction of over 100 species since the 1970s. I don't know if that's just the African clawed frog, but
I feel like that's just chytrid in general.
The chytrid fungus in general. And they also secrete skin toxins that are harmful to predators, which include native fish and other aquatic species that would try to eat them. So they are pretty interesting, but they are a big problem in the places that they've been introduced because they are so well adapted to a variety of environments, as well as very voracious eaters and reproducers.
So stupid.
They do look kind of dumb, but don't let their looks fool you. They're quite the doozy.
It's just so weird. You're telling me this thing eats birds? I can't picture it.
Yeah.
That derpy little face could not eat a bird.
I'm sure it's very small, like if like some hatchling or something gets, or like maybe a duckling, like a very small duckling. But I doubt that's their preferred. I'm sure they go for like fish like fry and aquatic invertebrates primarily. They're a little smaller, easier to catch. And I'm guessing, so a lot of them are either escaped from or released from laboratories, research facilities, pet owners, as well as being and then they have dispersed by swimming and moving over land. But they are now on, at least in California, they're on a restricted animals list. They cannot be imported, transported, or possessed without a permit.
Interesting.
That is all I have for the African clawed frog.
There's something I wanted to add to one of the species we talked about. But one of the species we talked about was one of the test species where they first witnessed like apoptosis in cells.
Okay.
I just forget which one it was.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
Well, Tyler, if you want to hit us.
Yeah, today's amazing species is going to be, we talked about it a little tiny bit earlier, the Archie's frog. If my eyes would like to load. There we go. These guys are critically endangered, found in New Zealand because they are one of those New Zealand primitive frogs. But there's anywhere between 5,000 and 20,000 mature individuals, which is quite a lot. for a critically endangered species,
Yeah,
but they're not very big. So we could take that with a grain of salt.
that's probably what they extrapolated it out to be. That's why that
Yeah.
number's so wide.
And these guys were recently assessed in 2015 and published in 2017. They get that critical endangered listing because the dramatic population decline of 88% in the Coromandel subpopulation between the last 3 generations. While the population has stabilized recently, there is no indication of it returning to its former size. So, yeah, they live anywhere between 50 and 1,000 meters above sea level. They are found in the North Island, with the largest subpopulation being that Coromandel range. There's also a smaller subpopulation in a 6 square kilometer area in the Warrorino Forest, which they translocated subpopulation to the Puriora Forest Park in the central North Island in 2006. So these 3 subpopulations are thought to occur in 4 threat-defined locations, and they have an estimated area of occupancy of 1,300-ish square kilometers and an extent of occurrence of 13,000 square kilometers. Although they have not, and these monitoring programs haven't recorded any evidence of decline in either of those. So the population range hasn't changed, just the amount of individuals in the population.
Okay.
Yeah, and as Alex said, that is an estimated 5,000 to 20,000 individuals. And you've had a population density recorded as high as 4.8 frogs per square meter in 1997, and emergence rates at up to 77 individuals per 100 square meters, where, the emergence rate the hatch rate?
I'm not sure. That sounds right, but I cannot say for sure.
Yeah. And then that massive decline from 1984 to 1994. So it started at 433 individuals in 1984 in that Coromandel region when they did their population estimate, to 53 in over the 1996 to 2002 survey.
That's quite a drop.
That is that 88% drop. And they have your normal threats, mining and quarrying, as well as logging and wood harvesting. 2 major things that have that large population kind of, especially for these guys, since they frogs do depend on, skin breathing as through chemical exchange that way. Things like that, a lot of pollutants or degrade the habitat significantly, are a massive threat. And unlike every other frog we've talked about, their biggest threat, well, there's a chytrid fungus to be had, but there is also common ship rats that are also a major threat. Yeah, because those would terrify.
That's different. Yeah.
You're talking about a 2-inch frog and a rat, especially New Zealand and Australia were just terrorized by rats. I feel like because they're just islands that were so isolated from everything else for so long that they didn't have rats. Now you introduce a small, voracious mammal, and it terrorizes the ecosystem.
Of course. Wow. It's amazing how that happens.
Yeah. But who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
But they do have a lot of conservation in place. The Native Frog Recovery Group and the Native Frog Recovery Plan, which the New Zealand Department of Conservation administered. They need their needs are an expansion of non-native predator control. Rats still kind of run rampant. They kind of tore down the kakapo and a lot of other native species as well.
Hate to see it.
Yeah, that's all I have though. That was a pretty in-depth go around on the Archie's frog here. And I will sauce it back over to Alex so he can talk about our ecology encyclopedia today.
Yeah, so our ecology encyclopedia today, I figured I would talk about metamorphosis, something we've talked about in the past, but I really wanted to hit it for the frogs. and like the amphibians in general, just because we've talked about these things like the eggs and tadpoles, but what does that look like? What does that mean? So I pulled up a picture here of kind of how frogs go from their regular old egg and to become an adult frog. So all amphibians, they have egg, like just jelly eggs. They don't have shells. It's pretty much just that you can see in the picture, the little yolk, quote unquote, is where the little frog embryo exists. And then that jelly that surrounds it is kind of to protect the embryo until it hatches. But that's all they've got. So that's why they're typically laid in water to allow those eggs to stay moist so the jelly doesn't harden or dry up and wind up killing the frog. And then they hatch into these into the tadpoles. And they kind of go through a growth stages here. You can see the young tadpoles look very fish-like. They have external gills that come off kind of the back of the head, and they'll more or less attach themselves to like substrates around them, or some of them are free swimming, especially as they get larger. They're able to eat more. And as they get older, the skin starts to grow over the gills, and most amphibians, we did talk about some that retain some of those
the neotenic qualities.
The neotenic features like those external gills. And the tail starts to get larger, and they tend to be more free swimming, and then eventually they start to grow legs, and as those legs start to form, especially the hind legs will grow first, and then those front legs start to grow, and at this point they're typically called more like a froglet. And then as eventually the limbs get larger and stronger, the tail starts to shorten, and then the skin, I don't know if the skin thickens a little bit, but it becomes more like the adult frog skin. And as they lose those gills, their lungs develop and they start to breathe more air. And usually about the stage when this second to last stage, which is still kind of a froglet, they start to leave the water, and then they lose this tail fairly quickly after that, becoming an adult frog. So that's this. I don't know if you could call it I guess you could call it a complete metamorphosis, because they go from looking nothing like the adults to looking like the adult, where incomplete, they kind of still look like the adults the whole way through for the most part. But I just want to kind of show you guys how those stages go through, so that way as we continue to talk about it, you're not confused like, well, what does a tadpole look like? Especially if you've never really seen them before, and then how do they get from there to being an adult frog? So pretty neat, the way they do this. And this is something that once we get past the amphibians, you really don't see this anymore. Any sort of like metamorphosis. This is the last place we'll really talk about this. So I just wanted to make sure it was something that we covered. Once we start to move away from the amphibians, we'll lose this and just talk more about growing.
Yeah,
growth stages.
We stop talking about incomplete or complete metamorphosis, and we go to more of oviparity versus viviparity.
Yes,
at least for the reptiles. And
yes,
birds all lay eggs, and mammals mostly are viviparous, with the two exceptions. But
yes, with the exceptions.
And I've seen tadpoles before, but I've never really seen like the middle group tadpole. I've seen like the little tiny ones, like a little bit after they hatch to like when they're still like freezing. But I haven't seen a tadpole where it's like almost to the froglet. Like,
yeah, usually once they get to that point, they start to metamorphosize. That tends to happen pretty rapidly, because if you think, when you got those legs hanging down, it makes swimming less efficient using the tail, and especially as the tail starts to get shorter and shorter, it becomes even less efficient to try to use the tail, and they have to use their legs more. But as well, they start to change their diet as well. So I think usually at that point it happens pretty quickly, because once they get to that point, you'd rather be an adult frog than you would a tadpole, for sure.
Yeah, you're like that preteen. It's like, I just wish everybody would treat me like an adult, and then you still got little baby features like a non-fully developed frontal cortex, whatever it's called.
Yes.
When you can still make bad decisions. But Anything else to add on your most wanted? Not most wanted. Your college encyclopedia.
That is all, and you can take us into our last segment for the day,
Yeah.
Tyler, that we brought back last week.
Yeah, we brought from the vault back from the vault. So today we're talking Microsauria, and I kind of figured it's kind of hard to go in depth on one individual species from the vault. So I'm kind of like going over groups from the vault. So today's from the vault is going to be Microsauria, and these guys were the largest group of tetrapods during the late Carnivorous and early Permian. I said largest. I was wrong. Most diverse, which also kind of means largest in a way. And these guys were a species-rich group of lepospondals. And lepospondals had the spool-shaped vertebrae that grew as bony cylinders around the notochord rather than ossifying from cartilage, which, like most fish, I believe, like the fish, that's how they kind of happened, was that they're a cartilaginous skeleton, and it slowly began to ossify more and more until it became a vertebrae, whereas these guys, the vertebrae kind of just formed around the notochord.
Okay.
We've had a lot of Microsaur findings throughout Europe and North America. Anywhere from Texas and Oklahoma to Ohio, all the way over to Nova Scotia, and even across the pond in places like Germany and the Czech Republic. And some of your most famous members of Microsauria would include what Alex has pulled up, which would be a Pelodosodus, and Diplocaulus, which is the prehistoric tetrapod that has the big, like, horseshoe head. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so, yes.
I can pull up an image here. So, yeah. This bad boy,
Yes.
with its odd head, it's a very bad image. It's super low. It's a super low pixel image that I had to blow up to infinity and beyond. But they have a very pointed head that almost looks like an arrowhead in some species, and other species have like a boomerang head. But these guys were like the predecessors to all modern tetrapods. And lepospondals actually gave rise to the Lys amphibia, which we are talking about now. Lys amphibia is all modern amphibians. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's really cool.
We're tying all the pieces together.
Yeah, definitely.
That is all I have for From the Vault today.
I think that'll do it for today then.
All right, so as always, make sure to follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. We are now available on all major platforms. I did figure out our Apple Podcasts. I don't know if I ever told you that, Alex.
I think you did.
So we are available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, iHeart Podcasts, Spotify, everything like that. YouTube. Subscribe to the page on YouTube where you can get all content from podcasts to short clips, Instagram and Facebook at Life Complete Story, as well as TikTok at Life Complete Story, or send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com for any questions, comments, anything that you want to ask us that doesn't quite fit in that little comment block. Anything else? Did I miss anything? I think I got them all.
I think you got them all.
Alex.
Fantastic.
Send us away.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Life the Complete Story. And as we always say at the end of every episode, keep on learning, learn something new. You'll never know what you find interesting. But I've been Alex and that's been Tyler. And we thank you for joining us and we will see you again next time.